welcome to another episode from the Norfolk Herald. It's a few days on from the last video. I don't know if you just saw that. There was a stoat that ran out into the road in front of the car. Anyway, as I was saying, it's a few days on from our last video, and to show how typically the weather changes in England, today I have a jumper on and the temperature must be at least 7-8 degrees colder than when we last spoke. Could even be 10 degrees, to be honest. I haven't checked the temperature this morning. Talking centigrade, of course. And there's a bit of a breeze, hence I've got a jumper on. Perversely, it's also somewhat humid, so although the temperature's cooler, as soon as you do anything you start to feel a little bit warm. So I decided not to do any work today. I'd done a whole day's gardening yesterday and I thought I'd come out and do a little video today, so here we are. Anyway, the emphasis today is going to be on war, World War I and World War II, and we'll be looking at three in total smallish features, part of our village and town architecture. That's a friend Leslie there doing the weeding. Part of our village and town architecture, which is sometimes overlooked, although maybe not in November, for reasons which will later become obvious. Anyway, one of the features we're going to look at is located in a churchyard. Another is located on a modern housing development. And the last one is in the middle of the countryside. Very interesting story with that one, which will transpire later. These traffic lights are normally busy, but never more so than when somebody in the left-hand lane has apparently broken down. A sad story for Mr. White Van Man. So we've just come through near the centre of Watton, the mid-Norfolk town I've referred to in some of my previous videos, and we're now headed in an easterly direction. We're going to the village of Carbrook. The bit we're going to is actually the village of Carbrook, although, as with a number of villages on the edges of towns, part of the original village parish has actually been subsumed within the town itself, so there is a section of this road a bit further along that becomes a Carbrook address. And as we head off to the village of Carbrook, we will also be going past the site of the second of the features that we're going to visit. So as I said, we're keeping it fairly local this morning. I'm not travelling too far. Not because the weather's cooler. Like my friend Sean over at Accounty for Old Cars, we believe in going al fresco whenever we can. If you've got a convertible, you make use of it. You just put a few more clothes on and carry on. Can't say that you can rely on heaters very much, but that's the delight of old cars. It has a heater, and sometimes it feels like putting out some heat, and sometimes it doesn't feel like putting out so much. So just on the right here is the second site that we'll be going to. You may notice this road here is fairly straight. I imagine it was always relatively straight, but it worked out quite nicely for when they wanted to build an airbase at Watton. The airbase is off to our right. It's closed now, of course, as we'll later discover. This housing on the right hand side and on the left hand side is former RAF housing. The runway runs almost due parallel to this road, a few hundred yards off to the right. So I mean, it was handy because they could put the housing stretched out along the runway, as it were, relatively conveniently. More RAF housing on the right there. But this is now actually the parish of Carbrook. That last lot of RAF housing was in Carbrook, and a bit before that was as well. But now we're off to Carbrook village. You may just have been able to see in the distance the church. We are actually headed for the church, but it's not the church we'll be looking at. As you can see, Pleasant Village, school on the right, typical Norfolk Flint school, and just along from the school, the Norfolk Flint Church. We'll just have a quick look at the outside of the church while we're here. As you can see, it's a square tower and not a round tower. And as I've referred to in some of my previous videos, Flint doesn't like being built square because it's difficult to get the strength in the corners. Consequently, the corners have to be buttressed all the way up to the top. But what we really have come to see is the commemorative cross for the First World War. It's unusual. It's a cavalry cross, and you'll see if we come round to the front. That there's the figure of Christ on the cross at the top. The lettering on the memorial, which was erected in 1922 to the fallen of the First World War, the Great War, the lettering is beginning to fade, but in more recent times they've put a plaque in front of the memorial just showing the names of the fallen so that they're still legible, and I'll just focus on that for you there in case you have any relatives who fell in the First World War at Carbrook. So as I say, a simple memorial, and it's one of those features that it's very easy just to pass by. I mean, obviously you can easily drive past it. As you can see here, the cross is slightly elevated above the road, but you're going to be concentrating on the road because there's a bit of a hill and you've got to keep looking ahead. Even if you happen to walk into the churchyard from this footpath, you could easily bypass it, and one shouldn't bypass these features. In my view, we need to remember sacrifice. I certainly don't glorify war, and nor do a lot of other people who feel like me. But we need to be aware of history and the men that were fallen, the men that gave their lives in a cause for freedom. And here we are at our second destination. That's the road we travelled along on the way to Carbrook, and we're actually standing in the grounds of what was RAF Watton. You can see over there a building that was obviously an RAF office, now given over to a furniture sales. As we pan round, this was vacant land on the estate, the RAF estate, and it's been developed with housing, as you can see. So we're standing in the appropriately named Washington Drive. RAF Watton was originally constructed by the RAF. It was taken over by the United States Air Force in 1943. It was originally a grass airstrip, and the USAF tarmacked it. The Americans used it as a servicing and repair base for liberators, and the 25th Bomb Group was stationed here, and this is the first of two memorials that are just at the entrance to Washington Drive. And if I just pan you round from this memorial, coming to the left, we're now obviously at the road that we parked in, Washington Drive. We're now facing east. You can see the busy Norwich Road on the left. But straight ahead of us is another memorial, which I'll now walk over to. So just to position you, we're now here. And this memorial really needs no further comment from me. So we're now driving back along the Norwich Road in a westerly direction, heading back towards the middle of Watton, which we will go through and out the other side to our final destination, which I hope you'll find the final destination to be interesting. It certainly has a fascinating little story to it. So just to reiterate, on the left here, ever since we came out of Washington Drive, all of the property that you've been seeing has either been original RAF housing or houses constructed on land that was part of the airbase. One of the major buildings that the USAF had on the RAF base for repairing the liberators is on the south side of the site. and that is now the site of what is HMP Wayland Prison. I've been attempting to discover whether any of the existing buildings on the Wayland prison site are part of the older structures. I think probably not, because I think the buildings that are now on the site got an award when it was constructed for the suitability, their suitability to their purpose. But if anybody happens to know, please let me know in the comments. And while I was talking there, you'll have perhaps seen a Rover SD1 pulled out in front of us. We shall now catch up to it, and it is a V8, a Vitesse no less, with a rather big bore exhaust by the looks of it. Well, it looks like Norfolk could be a county for old cars too. Oh, looks like our van is still stuck there. So we're headed now to the border between the villages of Merton and Thompson. And on that border, just on the Thompson side, is a memorial that was originally erected to commemorate the fallen of the First World War. But it's travelled. It has certainly travelled. And I'll explain the mystery when we get there. You can see from the light levels just how different a day this is from when we were last together. An HGV there which has just come out from the vegetable processing factory, which is our little anomaly in Merton. It's off to the left here at the end of that lane. So on the right we've come past the entrance to Merton Church, and the grounds on the right now are part of the Merton estate. Merton Hall is on the right, with the great pond on our right as well, which you'll be aware of if you watched my previous video on Merton Church, St Peter's Merton. And here we are. So as I turn in here to the right, in front of us you will see a war memorial. And so here we are in the peace and quiet of the country. On the opposite side of the road here is the village of Merton. The ground we're standing on is actually in the adjoining parish of Thompson. Remember those two names, Merton and Thompson, because here's the War Memorial. And if I focus you in on what it says of the location of the War Memorial, erected in proud and grateful memory of the gallant sons of Tottington. And those that died in the First World War are here, and I'll just pan down in case you have relatives in the area. And whilst it's always sad to see the names of the fallen, they are outnumbered by the returned, who are present on both sides of the memorial. And this is the other side of the memorial. You see far many more returned than were lost. But why does it say Tottington on the War Memorial? Well, interesting story. Tottington was one of 5 villages which were acquired by the War Office, by the government, in 1942 to create the Stanford training area, or Stanford battle area as we know it. And the vast majority of the land that was bought for that purpose, including the village of Tottington, some of the others were Sturston, Stanford, Buckenham Tofts. The vast majority of those villages and the land were owned by Lord Walsingham, the Merton estate. This is still Merton estate land over here. Now, the Lord Walsingham at the time donated this area of land, actually in the parish of Thompson, so that the Tottington War Memorial could be physically removed and positioned here. Tottington village is all of 2 miles away within the battle area, so it travelled a good long distance. But now if you look carefully in the section that says of Tottington, you will see that the lettering is slightly different to the rest of the lettering, and there's a rectangular line around the outside of that particular line. Now, one of the things the government in Great Britain was very concerned about at the during the early stages of the Second World War, 1940-41, was that there was going to be an invasion. And in anticipation that Germany would have invaded this country, all of the road signs were removed, so that if the Germans did get here, they wouldn't know where they were, or at least it would make it a lot more difficult for them to find their way around. So where we see road signs like this, which is actually a reasonably old one still, I know a lot of them are modern, but where we see these, they were actually removed and then replaced. Now, as part of that general plan to make it more difficult for the Germans to know where they were, it was decided on this particular memorial, anyway, while it was still within the village of Tottington, to remove the location. So they blanked out, chiselled away and smoothed over, so that it left a blank panel where it now says of Tottington. And that lettering was only reinstated some good time after the end of the Second World War. So consequently, it's a bit different. Fascinating story. So the land on this side, that is the north side of the road within Merton, is mainly woodland, until you get to Merton Hall, of course. But there's one or two interesting trees here, and I will just show you these. Firstly, if you're ever thinking of planting a monkey puzzle tree in your garden, because it's going to be suitable for a nice suburban garden location. Here we go. There's a mature monkey puzzle tree, I suppose about 200 years old. You wouldn't want that in your back garden. I hope you've enjoyed this video from the Norfolk Herald, something a little bit different. There's always something interesting or beautiful to see in Norfolk. And you can get to places where no other sound is audible apart from nature. Till next time. By the way, if you like what I'm doing, please do subscribe and give me a like, and I'd also be fascinated to hear any comments that you've got about the local area, if you're local, or if you're not local, how it differs or is the same as your area. Let's strike up a conversation. Let's communicate, because that's really what the internet's all about.